People keep coming in their hundreds of thousands to honour two British traditions, the Queen and the queue. It's a moment to pause and be present. Some say a queue is one of life's great levellers, but at lunchtime, a reminder of royalty. Prince William joking that he can't quite keep up with the King here. It's actually mesmerising to watch all of the people queuing, and it snakes back for miles and miles. And let's be honest, frankly, this couldn't be more British if it tried. People have been queuing for over 12 hours, and then there was a queue to join the queue, and then a third queue started, which people named the Elizabeth line, as people keep coming ahead of Monday's funeral. The queue now stretches for over 5 miles. Carried through, people tell us here, by those stalwart staples, conversations and crisps.
Sharing stories, having laughs and like banter.
Good chat.
Yeah, good chat.
Great
yeah.
chat.
Hours and hours fly by when you make queue mates and have queue dates. And you met in the queue?
Yeah.
Yeah, we met at like 10:30 last night. We've been with each other throughout the whole thing till now, yeah. We've actually got loads of things in common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will you stay in touch?
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
We're going to the funeral on Monday together.
Are you?
Yeah.
And how are you feeling about that? The funeral's
I mean, it's going to be sort of mixed emotions, and it's sort of, I guess, something that is like part of history, so we want to be there and sort of share that moment, I guess, with someone else.
Around the world, over 4 billion people are expected to watch the Queen's funeral on Monday, with many predicting it'll be the most viewed event in history as rehearsals continue night and day. And presidents and prime ministers have flown in, among them New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern and Canada's Justin Trudeau. There is controversy too, as Saudi's Crown Prince is expected to visit London, angering human rights activists. A world away from diplomatic wars and back in the queue. Sure you're warm enough?
It is a bit chilly still, but last night it was absolutely freezing.
Where 11-year-old Sherelle and her granny Carmel have spent more than 12 hours of quality time together so far.
We're dead on our feet. My hip joints are square. The backs are killing us, but we're nearly there now.
So did Granny put you up to this, or did you put Granny up to this? How did it work out?
Well, first off, I mentioned going giving flowers to the Queen as a joke, but I didn't think she'd actually take me.
And here we are in our blankets.
Here we are.
Others just wanted to be here. How are you doing with the sleep deprivation?
Don't even think about it. As you know, say, pardon me for the pun, there's enough time to sleep when you die, but if I'd have to stayed awake for 3 days, I would have stayed awake for 3 days. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pay respects to Her Majesty.
You're nearly there.
Nearly there.
How are your feet?
Yeah, painful.
Are they?
Super painful, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
And
Yeah.
have you? I'll walk with you because I don't want you to lose your place in the queue.
Okay.
Then most crucially, how is morale? Do you think for you?
You know what? It's been good all night, and I think because there was so much to see on the way, the bridges were so beautiful, and everything was about the Queen. She just made it. Like, we didn't even think twice. We just kept coming.
As King Charles hosts world leaders ahead of Monday's funeral at Westminster Abbey, the first funeral for a monarch there in over 300 years, said to be personally chosen by the Queen over Windsor because she wanted to make it easier for people to gather. And gather, they have.
Minnie Stevenson there. Our reporter Anya Pop is at the queue in Westminster now, and she joins me. Anya, tell us what the situation is.
Well, people here are at the final part of the queue before they get inside. You can see it's moving at quite a pace. People here seem to be quite upbeat and chatty, a stark difference from the other end. One person said that they were surprised at how emotional that they'd felt inside. It's perhaps hard for some people to understand their desire to forego comfort and sleep to stand for hours and hours, sometimes in the pouring rain, just for a few seconds paying respect to the late Queen. But that they have, in their tens of thousands. By the last count, the wait was over 12 hours, but of course it's been double that at times. The coffin won't be moved until Monday morning, but the accessibility queue has already been closed. Just about an hour ago, they said that they'd reached full capacity. As for the main queue here, authorities are saying at the moment that they're trying to continually review that. They want to keep it open for as long as possible to allow people to pay their respects. The wait, though, is undeniably gruelling. St John's Ambulance said that since the period of national mourning began, they've looked after around 600 people. Just yesterday, over 70 people were cared for by them, including 13 people being taken to hospital.
And Anya, people might get to see some other members of the royal family tonight.
Yes, some of those entering the hall tonight might be able to get a glimpse of some of the late Queen's grandchildren who are holding a vigil by her coffin tonight, just as the Queen's children did last night. It's expected that Prince Harry will be given a special dispensation to wear his military uniform, just as his disgraced uncle Prince Andrew did last night. And two of those who will be holding vigil tonight are Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. Just in the last hour, they put out this tribute to their grandmother. In it, they said there have been tears and laughter, silences and chatter, hugs and loneliness, and a collective loss for you, our beloved Queen and our beloved Granny. We, like many, thought you'd be here forever, and we will all miss you terribly. Their vigil with the other grandchildren tonight will be the last of the ceremonial duties by the late Queen's family until the funeral on Monday, where tens of thousands of people are expected to come out again to pay their final respects.
Anya, thanks very much. Well, joining me now is Professor Stephen Reicher, who is a social psychologist who's conducted research into crowd behaviour, including the crowds gathering right now in Westminster. Professor Reicher, the motivation of people wanting to gather is complicated, isn't it?
It is complicated. I mean, when you have phenomena like this, we tend to want to reduce it to something simple, a single motivation. People are there united in respect, or people are there all grieving. And not least, when you've only got a couple of minutes on the national news, there isn't time to go into all the complexities. But I think it is important to recognise there are very different motivations. For many people, people who identify deeply as British and who saw the Queen as the embodiment of Britishness, they've literally lost a little bit of themselves, and they feel an obligation to act. In a sense, it's a pilgrimage to show their commitment, to affirm their identity. But like any pilgrimage, it's only meaningful if it's difficult to do. If it was easy, it wouldn't mean anything at all. So in a sense, the fact you have to wait for a long time doesn't put people off. It's part of the experience. It's part of what makes it meaningful. It's part of what makes you feel that you belong by that act. But of course, many other people who heard Sorry.
Sorry, go on. I was going to ask whether it's sometimes about sort of community and togetherness as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll come on to that in a moment. I think one of the things you saw in the quotes you had just now in your piece is also, for many people, it's about being part of history. This is a deeply meaningful event. Now the crowds themselves have become part of the meaning of the event. And so to be part of that is to be part of history. It's to give yourself a little bit of immortality. It gives you significance by being part of that highly significant event. And what's more, when people attend it in families together, they can say in years to come, perhaps when the granny who was there is no longer with them, they can say to a child, you were there with your granny. It binds people together across the generations. So there are multiple motivations, not all of them to do with royalism, not all of them directly to do with the Queen. But on top of that, and you raised the point, and it's very important, is the crowd itself is part of the pleasure of being in a crowd. Because when you have a large number of people who have a sense of shared experience and shared identity, you break down the barriers that you see in everyday life with strangers. People start talking to each other, they start sharing their sandwiches, they even start dating. And so there is that sense of community and commonality and intimacy with others, which is rather lacking in our everyday lives.
And so if people don't feel the urge to queue, particularly, you know, with blanket media coverage, does that make them feel odd, disrespectful? What does it say about them?
You see, I think one of the dangers is if we take such a complex event with multiple motivations and we reduce it to a single thing, we say that everybody is there united in grief. And what's more, we describe the crowd in a sense as the embodiment of Britishness. You begin to create a norm which says to be British is to show respect and deference and be committed to the monarchy. And that begins to close things down because it says to people who don't feel that, you're not really part of the national community. Or even it says to them, if you express such views, people are going to be angry with you. So people begin to silence themselves and people begin to be excluded. So we've got to be very careful of acknowledging the multiplicity of views and the multiplicity of feelings and not create a narrow view of the national community which excludes many, many people with different experiences.
And how important is it to the survival of the monarchy that people are seen to gather and pay respects en masse? A sort of pageant with a purpose, as it were.
Well, all pageantry and all commemorations are about creating identities, creating a particular view of Britishness. They're about making history as much as reflecting history. And this one is no different. And of course, it's a very powerful pageant, which is organised around a notion that Britishness means monarchy. And to be British means commitment to the monarchy. So very much it's creating a particular view of who we are and marginalising those who don't agree with that notion of who we are.